Good morning, everyone. This is a pretty big deal. I think this is probably one of the biggest deals since the last conservative election race. Remember, and they had Deloitte proctoring the results, but they weren't actually counting the results. They were like, yes, they decided in the room. Anyway, this is interesting. O'Toole campaign believes alleged hack came from MP's office, says it has received confession letter. Aaron O'Toole's Conservative leadership campaign is alleging that someone in a member of Parliament's office passed sensitive login information to rival Peter MacKay's campaign, giving his chief competitor access to virtually all high-level campaign activity, according to a letter sent to police and obtained by the National Post. The O'Toole campaign believes at least 138 Zoom meetings in English were accessed and at least 7 meetings in French. Some of the meetings were high-level strategy discussions among senior campaign figures. The version of the letter obtained by the Post redacts some of the names of the person in the MP's office who is alleged to have taken the login credentials from the MP's email account. The O'Toole campaign has obtained a confession letter from the person, according to a senior campaign source. The campaign wouldn't identify the MP, but did acknowledge the person was an O'Toole supporter. I scroll down a little bit. The letter identifies Jamie Lall, described as, quote, a senior regional advisor to the Peter MacKay campaign, as the person who persuaded the employee in the MP's office to hunt for the login information. In a campaign statement on Friday, O'Toole identified Lall on Twitter as the subject of the complaint sent to the RCMP, Ontario Provincial Police, and the Toronto Police Service. Quote, not a single word of this is true, Lall wrote on Twitter, followed by 3 laughing emojis. Lall did not respond on Monday to a summary of the allegations made against him provided by the Post. It's interesting. You'd think you'd stay off Twitter and have an official response, right? Chill with the laughing emojis, maybe have an official response on letterhead, If you're going to tweet it, you tweet the picture of the official response on letterhead, right? Laughing emojis it kind of screams guilty, right? It kind of screams like, oh, this isn't serious, right? Oh, it's serious. Oh, yeah, it's serious. Back to this. The letter to police alleges that Lall convinced the person in the MP's office to download private video calls from the O'Toole campaign Zoom account and share them with the MacKay campaign. Now, I would think that the person who actually did the action would be, on the hook, right? If Lall is using it, he'd be on the hook for using the ill-gotten gains. And he's going to be on the hook for other things. The next paragraph explains that. Here we go. The campaign says it also learned that the two met in person where the login credentials were passed to Lall, who is then alleged to have shared the information with other campaign officials in Toronto. So he's in plenty of trouble without also attributing the retrieval, right? Like maybe they said he planted the idea, but somebody else made that choice and they did that. Okay. The O'Toole campaign is confident that there are enough digital fingerprints to make the case. When a private video of a meeting with social conservatives in Quebec was leaked to Radio Canada a week ago, the campaign launched a full investigation to determine how it happened. The MacKay campaign denied being the source of the leak to Radio Canada. Quote, the MacKay campaign is not in possession of any such documents, has made no attempt to obtain possession of any such information, and has leaked nothing of the sort to Radio Canada or any other entity, said Paquette. A deeper investigation following the Radio Canada incident then found multiple unauthorized entries into the O'Toole campaign's digital vault. The IT team on the O'Toole campaign cross-referenced their Zoom data and logs and IP addresses traces with the campaign's mailing list data. The 2 IP addresses associated with the unauthorized activity on the O'Toole's server were also on the campaign's mailing list, allowing the tech team to easily discover the identity of the 2 specific individuals, the letter says. All they had to do was look at the email addresses associated with the matching IP addresses. Quote, we have more specific information, however, we will await further discussion with police, the letter reads. 3 laughing emojis. Ha ha ha. I mean, yikes, right, Mr. Lall? That can't be good to read in the newspaper. Have you spoken to police yet? Do you want to come on Speaking Moistly if you haven't? Okay, here's the article continues. O'Toole's campaign says their investigation found that the login credentials were compromised on June 5th and that logs show unauthorized access on June 7th, 8th, 9th, 11th, and 12th. Wow, that's a pretty big deal, right? Here's another police related story, defund police, right? That's hashtag trending and stuff. It's very trendy. Everybody's like, yeah, get rid of them. Everybody doesn't like them anyway. Yeah, right. Have you guys been paying attention to the amount of tow trucks that have been lit on fire and just let to burn to the ground? I have news alerts for Google searches and things just to, keep myself on top of things. If something happens, I try and stay on top of it. But the tow truck thing has been something that's happening over the past 2.5 years. If you've been paying attention, it's pretty wild. Here's why. Here's what was going on. They just busted it. And this is one wild story. Okay, here we go. A corrupt Toronto police officer was part of a criminal organization that used stolen, encrypted police radios to unfairly profit in Southern Ontario's lucrative and dangerous tow truck wars, police said Monday. That's like the back cover of a spy novel, right? Like a dangerous tow trucking spy novel. Okay, back to this. 11 people were arrested in the anti-corruption and organized crime probe, including a police constable and 7 tow truck drivers. The constable was so entrenched in a towing cartel, he not only profited by sharing police equipment and information, he also owned a car rental service and 2 tow trucks being operated by members of the group, police allege. So you get into an accident, and the cop shows up on scene, and already his buddies know about the accident because they've got the same radio he's got, and they're sending the tow truck, and they use his car rental agency, right? Oh, what a great guy! Thanks so much for your help. Back to this. A police radio decrypts private communications between officers, allowing users to listen in. A consortium of tow truck drivers could then be the first to learn of traffic collisions and arrive at the scene to solicit towing business and other services, police said. Talk about ambulance chasers. Several tow truck employees from 3 different towing companies had access to 3 stolen Toronto police radios, at least one of which was stolen from police by a police officer, Superintendent Dominic Sinopoli. I think that's terrible. Anyway, alleged. I'm going to try again. He's named a lot. 3 radios were recovered, one of which was missing in February 2018, suggesting the scheme may have operated for more than 2 years. Highlighting the organization of the towing consortium, collision information from the radios was distributed using an internet app to other tow drivers who paid a monthly subscription fee. The industry is rife with corruption, Sinopoli said. Maybe? Okay. Toronto Police's Professional Standards Unit, which internally monitors the ethics and integrity of its members, started investigating theft of police radios last August. Quote, as the investigation took on some life, the corruption revealed itself, said Sinopoli. Okay, I scroll down. Quote, the officer would receive monetary compensation for the tow truck, he would receive kickbacks for the tips he provided, and he would receive referrals to his car rental agency, said Sinopoli. The Toronto Police knew Joseph owned a car rental service, but were unaware of his ownership of tow trucks, he said. The scheme started to unravel in May when officers stopped a tow truck driver on Highway 400. The officers found a genuine Toronto police radio in the tow truck, Sinopoli said. So that's a bad day, right? Like that's not great. The driver, Kevin Lima of Barrie, Ontario, was charged with dangerous driving and released at the scene. I guess at that point you're caught, right? Like they know who you are. Police discovered the radio had the same identification as a radio at 22 Division. When officers examined the radio still being used by police officers, it was found to be a clone, meaning a replica that looks and acts like the real thing. A few weeks later, police searched several homes in Toronto, Barrie, and Brampton and found a second Toronto police radio, reported lost or stolen from 14 Division. Also found were numerous other radios that appeared to be from other organizations, possibly police agencies, and parts used for cloning radios, police said. Sinopoli said organizations will need to come in and try to identify their radios. Man, like this thing was really, really deep. Wow. I scroll down a little bit. There's a lot of detail. I'm just giving you kind of the highlights here. I thought this was kind of funny. Sinopoli said the alleged organized crime group was the towing consortium itself, rather than a previously known group such as a gang, biker club, or mafia clan. Right? When you don't have like the bad guys to fight, you just become the bad guys, right? Like, oh well, there's nobody doing this. I wonder why nobody's doing this. Let's do this. It's a niche, right? Niche market. You just got into an accident and called cops. There you go. We got a tow truck for you and a car rental service. Welcome to Canada, eh? Anyway, this is what made me laugh. Toronto Police Chief Mark Saunders said the towing industry needs attention. Good time to resign, sir. Yeah, you know what we need to look at here? The towing industry. Forget those corrupt police. It's those tow truck consortiums. It's those guys that are bad guys. Like the world we live in is seriously upside down. It's super, right? Don't worry about the corrupt cops. No, I'll deal with them. Oh, sure. Back to this. Quote, we'll do everything we can, especially internally, to see what gaps may exist within our organization and tighten up on those. The gap is you've got police. See if you can follow me here. You've got police who are stealing radios and then illegally feeding the information through an app and then profiting off of multiple companies, multiple revenue streams off of the illegally stolen radio from the police station and their continued position within the police to steal other radios if one gets too hot. That's the problem, sir. Wow. Back to this. He says, quote, "It's not just up to the Toronto Police Service. I think what we need to have is a multi-layered approach involving different layers of government and also looking at the regulatory processes that exist." You know what this is? This is systemic racism is what this is. This radio thing has nothing to do with bad cops. This is racism in the what is it? The tow truck consortium industry. That is what this problem is. Next week on CBC, right? Okay. Here is, if we go back in time just a little while, we remember that there were rail blockades, and Justin Trudeau couldn't do anything about the rail blockades because he does not direct the RCMP. Mr. Scheer said on Friday, Mr. Scheer held a news conference, this is in February, in Ottawa, and called on Trudeau to direct the National Police Force to enforce the law and end the illegal tactics. He says, quote, "Democracy and the rule of law are fundamental pillars of our country, and it's time they are enforced." He said, "If they're not, the Trudeau Liberal government will set a dangerous precedent that a small few can have devastating impact on countless Canadians." Trudeau rejected Scheer's demand, quote, "We are not a kind of country where politicians get to tell the police what to do in operational matters," he said today following a security conference in Germany. No, not operational matters, but we are a country where the politicians will demand a committee to study systemic racism in police. Here's CTV News reporting. This is June 23rd. Today is June 23rd. MPs on Public Safety Committee to consider study of systemic police racism. This is the whole article, by the way. This is the whole thing. I can't believe that. I mean, I can totally believe this. Like, this is absolutely the kind of distraction that fits perfectly, right? Like, this is of course the thing that the police need to be dealing with, not the Toronto Tow Truck Consortium, not the campaign misconduct and the illegal activities. I mean, if this was somebody interfering in a Liberal leadership race, oh my goodness, right? Forget, like, the full force of everybody would be on top of that. But no. Let's have the government and everybody else focused on racism in the RCMP and racism across Canada too. Yeah, right. MPs on Public Safety Committee to consider study of systemic police racism. Right. The House of Commons Committee plans to meet this afternoon to consider doing a study of systemic racism in policing. Yeah. New Democrat MP Jack Harris has been pressing the Public Safety Committee to reconvene to get an examination underway. Harris wants RCMP Commissioner Brenda Lucki and Public Safety Minister Bill Blair, a former Toronto police chief, to be among the witnesses. The move comes after Lucki said she was struggling with the notion of systemic racism in the RCMP, only to acknowledge its existence days later. New Democrats have already called for a review of the RCMP budget and for more spending on mental health and addiction support to prevent crises from becoming police matters. Yeah, but you don't defund police to get stuff like that. You don't defund police because there's a lot of reasons for that, but this is a distraction. We're watching a magician wave his hand up here while he's taking something out of his pocket here. Okay? That's what we're watching. Poof. It's gone. Right? Racism. And that's what they want you to believe. Here's today, right? 5 hours ago, Black parents having the talk with youngsters to prepare them for racism. They're focusing on the incorrect stories, in my opinion. Here is twice forgotten soldier sues Veteran Affairs over abandoned case file. So what happened in this case is, here it is. Scott said his Veteran Affairs case manager stopped returning his calls and emails in the winter of 2019, just as the Liberal government was preparing to launch its long-awaited Pension for Life plan for Canada's former soldiers. What Scott didn't know at the time, and what took an access to information request filed by him with the federal government to fully explain, is that his case manager had been gone from the department since early 2019. Scott's file, and possibly those of others, lay buried and forgotten in the Edmonton VAC office, and no one noticed until Scott called the Veterans Crisis Line in late April 2019. Quote, "My file was abandoned and not handed over," he said. "The Veterans Team Service Manager in Edmonton did not hand over my file to another case manager." As a result, Scott said, he missed his chance to lock in the supplementary career replacement benefits, which had been a feature of the Veterans Affairs old benefit system before being phased out with the introduction of the current Liberal government's revised system. Scott's statements of claim doesn't cite a sum at this point, but he estimates the federal government's error has cost him as much as $1,000 per month. And here's another, this is looking at money, speaking of focusing on the wrong thing. Legions across Canada, this is posted yesterday, could close permanently, asking feds for help. Royal Canadian Legions across the country have been shuttered for months due to COVID-19, and now a number of them are facing the prospect of never being able to reopen, with most ineligible for the host of federal aid programs being offered to help keep other businesses and charitable organizations afloat. Hundreds of these facilities could be forced to shut their doors forever without federal intervention. And what are the feds spending money on, though? $100 million for Merit Functional Foods in Winnipeg. Quote, this facility will be a world leader in plant-based proteins and will create good jobs in a fast-growing field. The plant will use Canadian crops. Oh, Canadian crops. Farmers. There's a $100 million payout for you. Oh, no, it's not. It's a fraction of that probably. But, whatever. And how long will this protein... They're extracting proteins from peas and other vegetables. To what end? I don't know. Have you seen the vegan meat replacement shelves at the grocery store? They're usually not exactly picked over, right? So it's a weird place to place your government check, right? Weird place to put your $100 million. Here is Twitter. Katie Hopkins and a bunch of people on Twitter saying, here's what happens when you push any number and new cases into the Google machine. This is what happens. It's all COVID cases, right? And that number, 726 new cases, right? Any number. It's wild. It's wild. And this video illustrated it well, but it's short here. Hold on. Go here. I don't know why it's at the end. Okay, 273. Here we go. So you can do that for yourself if you're interested, but that's an interesting feature of Google, right? Scroll down, right? Interesting stuff. So any 3 digits into Google followed by new cases, you can't make this up. No, you can't make this up either. This is getting into business, etc. in Canada, and Heritage Minister raises the possibility of a link tax for internet companies. That's problematic. Have you been to Canada Report or CanadaPoly.com, the forum there? That's full of links and memes and discussion. But man, can't have that in Canada. Can't have any of free discussion or your own opinion. No. Here's the Globe and Mail. Last week, Canadian Heritage Minister Stephen Guilbeault called into question his own government's policies on supporting news media, suggesting that those programs should be replaced by copyright rules that would open the door to payments from internet companies such as Google and Facebook. Mr. Guilbeault indicated that a legislative package was being prepared for the fall that would include new powers for Canada's communications regulator and what are commonly referred to as Netflix taxes and internet linking taxes. The government's support for new internet taxes should not come as a surprise. There were strong signals in the spring budget, postponed indefinitely due to the current public health crisis, was going to include expanding sales taxes to capture digital sales such as Netflix or Shopify subscriptions. It is Mr. Guilbeault's plan, I scroll down, for a link tax that should spark the most concern, however. The government has long promoted its policies designed to support the Canadian media sector, including direct funding for local journalism, as well as labor and subscription tax credits. The taxpayer cost runs into the hundreds of millions of dollars, but is justified on the grounds that journalism is an essential service that requires public support. Yet Mr. Guilbeault now says the government should not be funding media, characterizing the policies as short-term measures aimed at mitigating a media emergency. Instead, Mr. Guilbeault supports a controversial copyright reform measure that would establish a news publisher's right to demand payment for services that link to their content. This payment, effectively a tax on linking, raises a host of concerns, not the least of which is that the proposal was not recommended by the government's own copyright review last year. Copyright reform in Canada is always complicated, particularly given that the responsibility for it is shared with Innovation, Science and Economic Development Minister Navdeep Bains, but delving into reforms that sparked protests in Europe could be politically risky for a minority government. News organizations already benefit from large platforms linking to their content, since the links generate visitors that could increase advertising revenues and paying subscribers. Organizations that do not want the links can easily opt out of appearing in services such as Google News or Facebook. In fact, after Google shut down its Google News service in Spain, studies found publisher website traffic dropped by 10%. More recently, after France established a new link tax for display of links and short summaries of news articles, Google said it would comply with the law by eliminating the summary and providing only a link. The French competition regulator responded by ordering Google to negotiate a linking license. These incidents, I scroll down, suggest that a Canadian link tax could lead to the removal of Canadian news from internet platforms, leading to less Canadian content and reduced traffic and revenues for Canadian news organizations. Moreover, given that the plan effectively targets U.S. companies, the link tax would also raise the prospect of retaliatory tariffs under the new Canada-U.S.-Mexico trade agreement. Those tariffs can be levied on any sector, enabling the U.S. to target sensitive industries such as dairy, lumber, or steel. This is just an awful, terrible idea. Terrible, awful, ridiculous idea. I hope it goes nowhere. I'm worried it will be forced through, and the NDP will say, "Oh, well, you can't do this, but you can do that link tax," or whatever. I think it's dangerous. We're embracing the censorship dogma, and we are descending into a hell of not being able to chart our own course. We are being dictated to that everything is racist, and if you don't agree it's racist, then you're racist for not seeing it. It's very, very, very scary. And even putting together an argument with supporting facts, linking, that's what they're trying to break. Like they're doing their best to silence and quell dissent by just making it so confusing and difficult to connect that people give up, and then they can say, well, look at the polls. The polls said exactly what the election result was. So how can you dispute that? It's unbelievable. Okay, here is financial news just to finish us off today. U.S. is said to announce aluminum tariffs on Canada by the end of the week. I thought it was retaliatory for something, so I thought it maybe somebody had done something stupid or blah 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 blah. But basically it's COVID related. Basically, like the market's cooled, things aren't moving as fast as they were, so because of that, the exports from Canada are just kind of flooding the market and reducing the price of the aluminum, and Trump doesn't want to see that, so 10%. So 10% tariffs are being proposed and could be in effect by July 1st. Happy USMCA, right? SNC Lavalin is again in the news, under fire for getting federal contracts despite bid rigging. Is anybody surprised by this? I'm not surprised by it. Like, they're going to do what they're going to do. They don't care. They've gotten away with it every time. The press lets them away with it. Even if they get bad press, it's like, it doesn't matter. Oh, we're really sorry. This is a learning situation for all Canadians. Isn't that what it is? Yes. We all learned when Justin groped that woman. Yeah, definitely. Okay, we all learned doubly when Justin wore blackface, right? But now 30 Rock is removing the blackface episodes. Remember the post-2000 show 30 Rock? They had blackface episodes, right? Right. What's his name? Tracy Jordan was part of that show. Why didn't he walk off in protest? Why didn't he take a knee? What complete horse crap. What an absolute disingenuous way to live. These people virtue signaling like they didn't laugh at 30 Rock at the time, like they didn't enable the systems that we live in. And you can't then retroactively cast it all as racist. It doesn't work. It doesn't fit. It's absolutely just stupid. And real corruption gets swept under the rug in the name of, you know what really needs looking at? The tow truck industry. Yeah, sure. The towing industry. SNC Law, don't look at them. Those people did nothing wrong. They were in court for years dealing with buying Gaddafi's son a yacht. I mean, jeepers creepers. The least they could get is a couple of big government contracts to even it out, right? They are buddies and they drive a lot of votes and a lot of fundraising, right? Play ball, right? It's so hypocritical. Okay, the last story. Last story is the Seattle Chop Zone or Chaz Zone or whatever it's called. The Seattle mayor has finally realized it's not the Woodstock of 2020, which I think they're probably trying to cast it like, oh, it's free love and peace, and we're all going to hang out, and Jimi Hendrix is going to, do whatever he does. Like, no, you have to. People don't do that. People do this, right? People segregate. People put up walls. People do ID checks. People do carding. People do. To keep themselves safe, even in the autonomous zone, there were people who identified themselves as heroes and were walking around trying to enforce some kind of laws, and then they were chased until they were chased down by mobs, right? This should show you exactly how poorly thought out this whole plan is. Like, they had no plan. They had a sign. We need ice. Like, what kind of idiots do this? And you want these people to lead you? Like, to lead you into what? This? It's despicable. It's despicable and disgusting. And I cannot believe, where are the adults saying, grow up, stop it, right? Everybody's saying, ooh, Cheetos bad, Orange Man bad. And nobody is realizing this is way worse. I said to my friend, this is communism. I said, you remember the monsters that lived under your bed? They have nothing on how scary this is. We are right on the precipice. We are watching it happen in real time. Go listen. If you didn't listen yesterday, go back and listen to what the Upper Grand District School Board thinks about racism. This is happening. Picture sand falling through your hands, right? Man, when it's gone, it's gone. It's scary. I don't know how to be more clear. I don't know how to tell anybody more clearly what's going on, but man, what they're doing, what they're pushing, what they're saying, it's lies. They're not focusing on the real problem. They're lying. They're lying and distracting you. I hope people pay attention. Thanks for watching, everybody. Check out CanadaPoly.com. Check out CanadaReport.co. Check out SpeakingMoistly.co. I'm recording with Greg today. And, well, have a wonderful, wonderful day.